All right. Good evening, everyone. We are just coming live. We are going, before we introduce ourselves with Irena, we would like to check with you guys if you can hear us well and if you can see us well. I'm just going to have a look, or Kasha will have a look at YouTube. So if anyone would be kind enough to say that we are visible and you can hear us, and Kasha, if you could let us know that it's all live and running. Okay, I've got the message that we are live indeed. So welcome everyone, and I would like to welcome Irena Gruca, with whom we were organizing this event for you. Irena, hello.
Hello and everyone. Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm very thrilled that it's finally happening, and welcome everyone. And I'm Irena Gruca-Rozbicka. I do represent Crew United. It's an international platform for professional filmmakers, for actors, and we are active Europe-wide. We are giving you the possibility to showcase your filmography, your portfolio, to find the perfect team for your film. And we are supporting, of course, the fair conditions on the industry market. And I'm very, very thrilled to be here together with my team, which I will introduce later.
Hello, and I'm welcoming you on behalf of Laboratorium Meissnera, which is an acting studio operating on the Polish market for 10 years. I have studied myself acting in London, and actually, Miriam Lucia, who is our extra excellent, fantastic guest today, was one of my teachers back in 2008. Later, when I come back to Poland after graduating in London, I have started sharing what I've learned in London. And one of the main subjects which I was studying there was the Meissner technique. So this is how we came to life. And we are a few teachers spreading the Meissner technique in Poland. And we also work in Paris, in Switzerland, in Spain. And I was also teaching for 4 years in London. So from my end, welcome everybody. And I'm absolutely excited and thrilled to be here with you, and to have Miriam as our guest. Hi, Miriam.
Hi,
Hello.
Miriam.
Good afternoon or good evening, everyone.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So, Miriam, do you mind if we say just a few words about you to our audience? I'm sure that many people are aware of your work, but we would like to just add a few sentences. Um,
Our lovely guest, our expert, Miriam Lucia, was born in Australia, in Melbourne, but she has Italian ancestry. She was trained as an actress in Melbourne, but then she came to London and continued her work as an actress.
And apart from acting, in 2010, Miriam has received her training in the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama in London, and she became an acting coach and also a teacher. And she also founded the Clerkenwell studio for professional actors to offer them continuous work, which she runs until today. And in 2016, Miriam has trained as an intimacy coordinator with intimacy on set. And I remember, Miriam, you told me when we spoke that originally you thought that it's going to be like an extension to your work as a coach. But then after Me Too Revolution, it really snowballed, and you are very busy with this kind of work as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. For sure.
And you probably work non-stop as intimacy coordinator. If I have a look at your filmography, which contains such major production as House of Dragons or White Lotus, and most recently The Diplomat. And you work all over the world as intimacy coordinator, but also as a teacher. And you lived in Australia and the UK, but also you lived and worked in USA and in the Netherlands.
Yes.
And we are very, very proud and thankful that you accepted our invitation and agreed to share your knowledge with our also very truly international audience.
Yes.
Yes,
Lovely.
we have received many questions from people from different countries, and mainly from Poland, Germany, France, Greece, Switzerland, United Kingdom as well. We had a few questions, and we actually, this is for our audience to know that we have. Miriam has decided to alter the plan for today's seminar a bit, because she thought the questions are really how to say it,
Insightful.
Relevant.
relevant to the subject. So Miriam has decided that the seminar, let's say the first part will be a bit shortened, and then she will answer to more questions, because she thought it's going to be more beneficial since the questions came from you guys.
Brilliant.
So I think, Irena, we will let Miriam take over, and we will be listening to you, Miriam. Thank you again for being with us. We are so happy for your presence and your expertise to be shared with people.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sylvia, and thank you, Irena. It's very nice to meet you, Irena, even if it is this kind of medium. But I'm delighted, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. And I hope that I am worthy of the introduction.
Oh, I'm sure you are.
So, hello, everyone. I can't see you, but I know you're out there. And I just wanted to say how grateful I am that this role is being so accepted throughout the world, and that more and more people are inquisitive and wanting to sort of establish it as an important part of our industry. So without further ado, I think that what I'd like to start with, first of all, is my understanding is that you are all actors, and actors somehow get left behind quite often in this process, and they're not as empowered as they should be when it comes to knowing what it is that I do, or that colleagues of mine do, and knowing how best to utilize us, to use us as a tool for yourselves to feel empowered and to feel knowledgeable and to know how to approach these scenes. So yes, I trained in 2016 with a company called Intimacy on Set. They still train people. I was then thrown in at the deep end, really, very much when the industry really didn't know very much at all about what we did. And so I would turn up on set and have a lot of really strange looks my way without crew not really knowing why I was there, or if I was there to check up on them, or what the process was. We've come a long way, I'm happy to say. But back in those days, as Sylvia mentioned, I came from an acting coach background, acting myself, and then as an actor trainer and coach. And I honestly believed that I would train so that I could have that knowledge, and it would enable my teaching and my coaching to be even more in-depth and improve. The reason I came to the conclusion that I wanted to train was that I was at the time directing a Sam Shepard play at a drama school, one of the drama schools that I teach in. And this particular play had some intimate content, quite a lot of intimate content. And the actors were comfortable with each other, but we still struggled in terms of finding a way into these scenes that were not awkward, not humiliating, not embarrassing, and more importantly, repeatable, comfortable, consensual, safe. And I thought, I really need to find out how to approach a play or a film from a directorial point of view and a teaching point of view, how to approach it, how to make it possible that these scenes can be done in a very easy, straightforward manner. So that is the background. So I decided to train, and I thought, that's it, I'm trained now, I know what I'm doing. But instead, as Sylvia mentioned, the Me Too revolution, as she called it, I love that word, began, and all of a sudden, I was thrown in. I was thrown in at the deep end. And my first job was on a film called Blue Story. And even though the title may suggest something pornographic, it wasn't that at all. But it did have some fairly descriptive and out there, if you like, scenes with quite young actors. And being on that set, and it was quite a low budget film. So being on that set was literally being in the room with the actors, with the director, with everyone, really. And that was a difficult world to navigate, because the director in particular, as keen as he was to have me there, didn't really understand what the process was. So I had to sort of really basically go in as an educator as well and explain why I'm there, how this is going to work, that we do need rehearsal, we don't change things once we've set them, etc., etc., etc. From that, I then went on to Gangs of London and a show called The Great, many other things. And then somehow ended up on House of the Dragon and White Lotus and a show called Industry, which I'm back on at the moment, which is an HBO show. So that's me, but I want to talk about you, the actor, and what happens when we audition and we get the job, and somewhere along the line, in one of the scenes, in the script, we read something that says, they sit on the sofa and they make out, or she comes out of the bathroom naked, and we ignore it. And we think, oh, well, it's in the script, but actually maybe I don't really have to do that. And therefore we don't address it. And the actor doesn't address it. They sign the contract. All of a sudden they're on set, or they're on the job, and that discussion comes up. And the actor thinks, oh, I see. So I really do have to be naked coming out of the bathroom. Or, oh, I see, making out actually means not just a kiss, it actually means they have sex on the sofa. So it's about understanding what you can do from the very beginning and not to allow any gray areas to arise. So clarity. And the other big C word for me is communication. And the communication shouldn't stop. It should start at the very beginning of this process. And I know a lot of our questions are to do with that later, but just to give you a kind of an overview of that. So you get the script, you see that there's a couple of scenes or one scene that has nudity or has sexual simulation, or in fact, just has a kiss or something intimate that you don't have a great deal of detail about. Most important thing is to start asking the questions. You can ask the questions in the audition, and you should. You definitely should, because I've dealt often with actors who don't ask that question, and then they go through to recall, and then maybe they go through to final recall and they haven't asked that question, and they're panicking about it in the back of their minds, but they want the job so badly that they don't ask the question. So it's important. It's not going to mean that you don't get the job. And this is what's very, very important. I think the pressure that actors have felt to just say yes to things, that has gone or is going. I know that things work differently in different countries, but certainly now that is not going to, asking the question is not going to prevent you getting the job. What might prevent you getting the job is when they say to you, yes, there is nudity, and we expect breast nudity in this, and you actually say, oh, okay, I'm not comfortable with that. I actually don't want to do that. That may stop you from doing the job, from getting the job. But I'm finding that even that is less of an issue now. So that should make you all feel a little more positive about asking the question. Ask the question in the audition room, ask the question to your agent. Then once you have some clarity on it, really reflect and think about whether you still want to go ahead with the job. Because especially in film and TV, as you know, that scene or scenes are out there, and they're out there forever. And you have to feel comfortable. You have to feel that you can manage that. So communication, communication, communication. Vital, important. Ask the question from the beginning. So assuming you have, and assuming you've got the job, and assuming that you're now in on the production, and there are discussions around this particular scene or scenes that you'll be doing, what do you do now? You ask if there's an intimacy coordinator that's being brought on board. You ask if you haven't been told, if you haven't been approached by anyone in production, you can ask that question. Will there be an intimacy coordinator on set? Is there an intimacy coordinator for me to talk to? If not, can I speak to the producer? And you should always have access to the producer and ask. Now, if it's not a big budget, it could be that possibly that isn't going to be something that you can get, but nonetheless, there are guidelines to what is safe set practice now. So you can certainly speak to the producer, speak to the director, and say, I know there are guidelines, I know there are protocols for closed set. Can we make sure that these are in place? So there's a lot that you can do before anything. So we can talk about that more a little later. Certainly, I know some of the questions again ask these sorts of questions, so we can talk about that. The next thing I'd like to talk about is rehearsal, and sometimes, as you know, especially on a film or in a series, there is a great deal of time for rehearsal. Sometimes there is, but sometimes there isn't. And the only rehearsal that you will get, even with these intimate scenes, is actually on the day. So what we need to ensure, or what the intimacy coordinator will ensure, if it's on the day, or even if it is prior to shoot day, is that it's a closed set rehearsal. You only have the people that really, really, really need to be there. So sometimes that can just be me with the actors, which is superb and really wonderful, because that means I can really have an opportunity to get to know you and to really understand what your boundaries are. Now, if that isn't going to happen, what I will always do anyway is check in with the actors on call or on a Zoom beforehand, and have an individual chat with the actors for the upcoming scene, to really find out if things have been communicated to you correctly, if you have spoken to costume, if you know what you're wearing in the scene, if you know what's available for you in terms of barriers, modesty garments, all of that. And then we would meet in the rehearsal. After that check-in, however, that I've done with you, I would feed back any concerns or thoughts that you have to the director and to the producer. So if something does come up that you're not happy with, and I can give you an example of this. If there was a situation where you were told that you were going to be wearing a prosthetic for a full frontal nude scene, if you were told that you were going to be wearing a prosthetic penis or a merkin, you may want to have a fitting for that and discussions for that way before, and have some input, because there have been all sorts of situations where the actor required to have a prosthetic will turn up for the fitting and the prosthetic just is wrong. It's just wrong. It's too big, it's too small, it's too uncomfortable, or the actor is playing a character where they would have had circumcision at birth and the prosthetic penis doesn't have that. All of these things, all of these details need to be ironed out. But I don't want to go off on a tangent and just talk about prosthetics, but it's an example that came up this week, so it's fresh in my mind. So in the rehearsal, the most important thing is who's there. It might just be me, but more often than not, it's me, it's the director, and occasionally the DOP, director of photography, will be brought in. Perhaps not for when we're actually blocking, but once we have the scene and they can come in and describe how or determine how the scene will be shot. So in that rehearsal, what will happen is that I will question you and find out where you are comfortable and not comfortable being held, touched physically. And there are no questions asked. It's just literally, if you are not comfortable with somebody putting their hand around your neck, that doesn't happen. And we find a different way. Equally, we have to find out where you are happy to be touched intimately. That could mean on the chest area, breasts. When it comes to any touching on genitalia, that isn't actually allowed. So we have all sorts of things in place for that, and barriers, modesty garments, shields, all sorts of things. So we cheat it. We find out a way of, if a scene requires, and there was something I worked on again this week, where the scene required an actress to take the male actor's hand and slip it up her dress as though his hand was going into her underwear. Of course, that isn't really happening. It is simulated and suggested and implied. So we work out a way that looks believable. And that's the choreography. If we're doing a scene that is really about sexual simulation, intercourse scene, then we would work out those moves once again in a very pragmatic way. The language that is used is very clear. The language, we use the word vagina, penis, breast, intercourse. We don't use nicknames. In fact, on Blue Story, that was one of the issues that I had to iron out at the beginning with the director and say, no, we don't use that language. That language is not correct. It's not appropriate for the work. So that's something to know as well. And so we use the correct language and we work through the beats of the scene. Actor A lifts his hand onto actor B's face. He moves his hand onto her breast. She moves her hand onto his leg. She touches his penis, whatever it is. And we work through it that way. And we repeat the action. We find the shape of the scene. We then bring in the DOP. He or she will confer with the director in terms of what shots will be used. Sometimes we have a storyboard. That's so helpful, really helpful for you, the actors, to be able to see what the shots are going to be. And that's basically what happens in the rehearsal. When we get to the shoot day, to the on-set day, we revisit the choreography so that we remember what it is, and we do that again in a closed set rehearsal. Now, that again is myself, the director, the DOP. We then show crew, and that is minimal crew. So that is where I need to also be in constant communication with the first AD. First AD is your best friend, my best friend on set, because he or she runs the ship and will make sure that that what is required for the scene happens. So we will show the crew, and hopefully that's minimal. And then, and it will be, and then of course it's explained very clearly that in a closed set situation, monitors are off. The only monitors that are on, script supervisor, director, focus puller, and myself. And that is it. And if you're in a situation where monitors are not easily hidden, or you can cover them, and that's something that the first AD should be really aware of, and make sure that it's safe. My job is not to police that area. My job is to request that happens. The protocols are sent out, but I'm not there like the school teacher going around and making sure that everyone is doing that. There has to be a level of trust. Obviously, if I am concerned about something, I flag it to the first AD, and it's dealt with. It's dealt with as quickly as possible. And for instance, if there's somebody in the room and I think, they really don't need to be doing that here, they can be elsewhere, and we deal with that. So you start to shoot the scene. The actors understand that if they need a break at any point, they can call a timeout. And sometimes there's a magic word for that. Sometimes, as a sense of fun, you have a word. I don't know, bananas, pineapples, something like that. If one of the actors calls that, we take a break. Take a break for all sorts of reasons. Modesty garment has come untaped. We need time to bring costume or makeup on. The choreography goes awry. We need to reset it. An actor just needs a break physically. If the position is quite a difficult position to hold or to repeat, or they need a break emotionally. They're tired. Whatever the reason may be. So that is in place. Sometimes also it's very important to know that you need to check in with crew. And I think that's important too, that the crew are comfortable. And I do make sure when I'm on set that that I introduce myself to the key people, certainly loads of people, but the key people that are going to be around on set that day, because it's just as awkward for crew. It's not just the actors. And I think that's something to remember. The main thing here is that there's a respect and trust. And as I continue with this work, I realize that is something that didn't exist throughout before. But I can see that really now it is, it's just becoming commonplace and standard for that to be the way we operate. And it means that the work is better. It means that we can get the work done efficiently. And it means that people walk away from a scene like that feeling okay, more than okay, feeling great about the work. As Tom Hollander said to me in, I don't know, some of you might have seen it, in quite a revealing scene, he said, I feel like I've had sex, but I haven't had sex, so I feel great. And I thought that was quite an enlightening and fun comment to make. And what more could I ask for? I think it's also important to note that sometimes people call my role or think an intimacy coach. I'm not an intimacy coach. I'm a coordinator. And what that coordination means is that the intimacy must be consensual. So I have to make sure that people have consented to what is being asked of them in that scene. The intimacy has to be choreographed, and that needs to be coordinated. And the intimacy scenes must follow a protocol, and that's what I have to coordinate. I don't coach and sort of make things better or worse. I make sure that the scene looks believable, and I make sure that I am working with the director to ensure that he or she is getting what they need from the scene. I'm not the director. I'm the intimacy coordinator. I'm not the writer. I am not the creator. I am there to enable the work to happen. And also importantly, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a psychotherapist, I'm not a psychologist. I don't believe it's healthy to start thinking that an intimacy coordinator takes on all of those different aspects. My job is not that. My job is to make sure that the actor can work under the conditions that have been set for those scenes. That's what's important to me. So I'm just going to make sure that I am covering what I want to cover. Yeah. How do you negotiate what you are comfortable with or not comfortable with? And I am happy to say that this kind of discussion is becoming commonplace now, and that the actor is often invited to speak to the writers and to the producers and to the director openly. For instance, I've been on set on productions where the actress has said, I know that this is a scene where I'm supposed to take my top off. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. Is there a way that we can imply this action, or is there a way that we can find a different way of doing the scene that is just as sexy or just as fun, or whatever the scene is? And interestingly, more and more actors are now, that happened on House of the Dragon, and it's happened on Industry, where the actress or the actor absolutely managed to negotiate their way out of doing something they didn't feel comfortable doing, even though they had initially said, okay. So that's interesting. If you say no, it's no. And you can't bring an actor screaming and crying out of their trailer to do something they don't want to do. Equally, however, I think it is important that if you are up for a part and you get it, and you know that certain things are required that are intimate or nude, that you take that on board and understand that that you have a responsibility as the actor. You said yes. You said yes. Therefore, let's try and make this work. If, of course, then it doesn't make sense to you in the scene, and that's when these things often come up, when an actor or an actress will say, if you can explain to me, director or producer, if you can explain to me why it's important for the character to do this at this point, then I can do it. But unless I understand that, can I find another way? And that's a really empowering conversation, because it's not just no, it's actually, I don't see why it's important. Can you explain to me why? And then you have taken on board that it requires certain things, certain level of nudity, etc. And you're not just blocking it. So that's important. It's important to negotiate, and you can negotiate right up until, you know, the shoot day. But once we've set it in stone, once we know what we're doing, it shouldn't change, and it won't change on the set. And I know, again, this is a question that is coming up later, so I don't want to sort of talk too much about it. But once we have the scene, we have the scene. We shouldn't expect an actor to go further than what that scene was. What can sometimes happen is less happens, and that's always delightful. And that happened recently as well, where, you know, we thought we were going to go to stage 2, 3, and actually we only needed stage 2 because the scene was working fine, and we didn't need that extra level of intimacy. So, but what shouldn't happen is that we go further. And I know that certainly that was something that happened in the past, for sure, that directors and producers, especially on Game of Thrones, would require and ask an actor to do more than they initially thought they were going to be doing. And that doesn't happen anymore if there is an IC on set. So that's just good for you to know. The other thing, I just want to touch on this lightly, is that production companies like HBO now and Netflix absolutely require an intimacy coordinator to be part of the production. And with that comes a lot of legal stuff, waivers and riders, and which is the less enjoyable part of my job, I must say, where I am talking to the legal department of HBO, etc., just making sure that agents are happy with what the scene is, that we get the waivers signed before the shoot day. There's that kind of pressure, and of course everybody's ticking boxes and making sure that that everything is in place. It's a good thing ultimately, because there's a paper trail, and it means for you, again, that you are signing a piece of paper that makes it all very clear what you are prepared and not prepared to show or do. So that is something else that is becoming absolute commonplace. But it can be tedious on my end. So I think it's probably important to just reiterate again that the most important part of this process is communication, that my job is to advocate between you and the production, so that if there is something that you are uncomfortable with, uncertain about, I will be the person that you speak to. I will then communicate that to production. They will then say, oh, okay, can you ask her? Can you ask him? Can you ask they if they are comfortable with this instead? And it's a negotiation. That is primarily my job. My other job is to understand the actor's process, which I think I understand quite well. I've been teaching for many years, and that is a huge plus for me, that I come from that background, and that I have a sense of how individual actors like to process work. And so I'd like to think sensitive, emotionally sensitive to what's working for them, and in terms of getting the scene. So that's my job. My job is I'm there for you. I am there for you, primarily. And it's a much needed thing. And most of the time, the feedback that I do get is very, very positive, and actors are very pleased that there is somebody there that they can send a quick message to or check something. And there wasn't anyone before. It used to be primarily makeup or costume that used to look after actors on set, and that wasn't always easy for them to do, because they're thinking about a million other things. But on that note, I think I would love to hear some of your questions and to answer them as as well as I can. I hope I've been able to make sense of this role, and I hope I haven't left any big gaps. But hopefully we can cover that with questions. So without much further ado, I just want to hand over to Irena and see if we can get on with some of those questions. Thank you. Oh, I can't hear you, Irena.
No, thank you, Miriam. This was so insightful, and I think, Sylvia, you would like to invite the first person, right? We have a special guest. You are so muted.
Yes, I would. Thank you, Irena. Thank you, Miriam. It was very insightful indeed. Such a good package of knowledge. I'm very grateful. And I would like to invite Ula Zawadzka to ask the first question. Ula is an actress, Polish-American actress, and also a director. And she runs a blog which she created for actors, and she has a nice community of actors around her business.
Great. Hello, Ula. Lovely to meet you.
Hello. Great to meet you. I'm very honored to be the first one to ask the question from my followers. It actually summarizes a little bit of the things you already said.
Yeah.
So, intimacy coordinator helps actors get ready for the intimate scene. But does she also take care of them after the scene? And when does the work of the intimacy coordinator begin, and when does it end?
Great. So we've kind of half covered this, I think. So just quickly again, just to go through the process. I'm given the scripts. I read the scripts. I identify the scenes that have intimate content. I then send that breakdown scene to the directors, the producers. I then get the find out who the cast is going to be, and I check in with them. So I go through the scenes with the actors. So that's the first stage of getting ready for the intimate scene. And then the rest of it is, as we said, setting up a time for rehearsal and blocking the scenes, working out the choreography. On shoot day, very much making sure that I'm there for them, checking in with them. I'm there throughout the scene until the scene is completed. What happens afterwards, and I'm so glad you mentioned it because it's something I didn't talk about, was that I will check in with them straight after the scene. And then usually what I do is I like to leave it for a day or so that the actor has had a chance to reflect on the scene, to really think it through. And also it's interesting, I think if you give them a day or so, that's when people really know how they feel about something. And not straight away after the scene, but it's after they've thought about it and they've thought about how the day went, if everything was in place that they asked for, if everything I said that would happen did happen. And that's usually how it goes. And then I will send a feedback on-set report to production so that, again, we have a paper trail. So I don't know if that's kind of answered everything for you, Ula.
Yes, it's actually very interesting that then you give the feedback to the production company as well, that you are checking in with the actors like after the time has passed, because probably the emotions, the adrenaline is very high just after the scene, so they have like a moment to say like, oh, okay. Okay.
That's right, because often before we get to the scene, there's a lot of anticipation and nerves, a lot. And then when they're actually doing the scene, it goes quite well, because the anticipation's over. And then I think it's important, as you say, to let it rest for a couple of days and then have a conversation, a little check-in, Now, sometimes if they're big superstars, big movie stars, I play it by ear a little bit. They might be, they might have had a lot of experience. They don't need the intimacy coordinator to go, hi there, hi there, Tom Cruise. How are you feeling about, whatever? Because they have worked with people that they don't need. I judge it. I always call and check in with young actors, less experienced actors, and yes, less experienced, I suppose. And I just judge it, but there's always a follow-up, and a report. Yeah.
Thank you. And I will hear you later for my second question.
Lovely. Thank you.
So our next person who will ask the question is Małgorzata Lipman, and Małgorzata is an actress, but also acting teacher and acting coach, and sometimes she does work as a casting director.
Oh, brilliant!
So I'm going
lovely
to
meet you. I love your name, Małgorzata.
It's Margaret.
Margaret.
But in Polish, it's Małgorzata. Yes.
It's lovely.
Yes,
nice to meet you.
It's really nice to meet you, and it was really very insightful, as my friend said. And I have this question that you already said, that you started to talk about the situations, but working with my students, I have a lot of stories from them that they actually agreed for some extension of the intimacy on the set, and all of a sudden they're during the shooting, and director or producer, they're saying, oh my god, it's going so well, let's do something more.
Yeah.
And you're doing so well, or we really need it because I can feel that it's going so well, so we can do some more. And the question is, of course, how we as actors can take care of ourselves, how we can put the boundaries and that they are not crossed, especially when they're young actors who don't have name, they don't have the position just to say no, and they are afraid to say no. So what are the rights of actor on the set?
So this is difficult if there isn't an intimacy coordinator on set, obviously, because the reason we're there is to stop this. However, I think, as I mentioned earlier on, the more knowledge the actor has, the more knowledge they have, the more empowered they are. Now, what you can do is you can say at the beginning, there are guidelines now. There are guidelines, written guidelines, safe set guidelines that I would like people to share. You can say, I know it's difficult for a young actor. You just go, oh God, I can't do that. You can do that. It's probably quite a nice idea to, I would say, it depends on who the producer is, but to speak to the producer, I would say, in a situation like that, above the director, to speak to the producer and say, I'm concerned. I've had these experiences before. I don't want them to happen again. There are guidelines, and this is where you can source them from, and there are on-set protocols, and that's number one that you can do. Number two, you can say no on set. You can. I know it's hard. I know it feels impossible, but it isn't. And a good way of doing that as well is to have good communication with your acting partner. So if it's a scene where you're in the scene with someone, two people saying no is a lot stronger than one person saying no.
Yeah.
And just saying, well, no, we agreed that we would get to this point. I'm not prepared to go further. And to always get your agent involved. Now, I know some young actors may not have an agent. They may not. If you do, I think an agent phoning the producer prior to the scene being done, if there's no waiver or legal rider in place, is hugely impactful. And to just say, I'm just making sure that, blah, blah, is going to be looked after in this scene. Remember, these are the boundaries. So I think, in a way, the more people you get involved, the safer it becomes. And there are certainly safe set protocols and safe set guidelines out there that you can source completely easily. The other really good person to speak to is the first AD. Because he or she running the show, they can, they really should be part of that conversation where the actor says, please, you know, I've had a bad experience. I don't want to go down that route again. Obviously the director, but to get in, to establish it early, so that, okay, say they've said that, and then they find themselves in a situation where the director says, it was really great, let's just try one more where actually this time you do this. And you can just say, I'm sorry, we had these discussions and I'm not comfortable with that. You know, you don't have to walk off set, it doesn't have to be a drama, but it just has to be clear, really clear. And you need people on your side. And I think more and more that people see things in writing as well, safe set protocols sent to the production, maybe through the agent, maybe through the casting director. You know, that there's a protocol, there's a process. I think this helps, because then people start to notice that there is certain things in place, and we can't have a Harvey Weinstein situation happen ever again. And we can't have directors being so powerful that they can just expect actors to do whatever they say or they'll be sacked. I mean, it's rubbish, and it shouldn't happen anymore. And that's why I think it's important that the work I do is also brought into drama schools, so that actors, by the time they graduate, you know, they feel like, oh, there's this thing in place. You know, I hope that has given you some.
Yeah, actually a lot. And the thing that you're saying that about the communication, like in between actors, and to have the support from other people, it's really important. And I think that the guidelines are also, this is something that we should like spread around and make people know that there is something like this. And
I think you are in an amazing position, being a casting director and a coach and a teacher, because you could be one of those people who is actually, you know, making sure that that word is out there, and it becomes commonplace. It just becomes common. All casting directors have guidelines and safe set, you know.
Yeah, and also the actors' equities. I'm a part of one in Poland, so I think that we should also like make it.
It's starting at that level. Yeah, I mean, it's what happened here. It's just what happened here a few years back. You know, having it recognized as you know, the way we work now. You know.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure.
Right, the next question is coming from the lovely Greece, from Athens, where my dear colleague Venia Vergo, the project manager of Crew United Greece, is working. Hi, Venia.
Hello, Irena. Thank you so much. Hi, Miriam. Kalispera from Athens. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure listening to you all this time. You know, it's been years now that we hear about the importance of your profession over, you know, panels at festival fairs. And it's been a great pleasure to hear about your profession with such clarity today. And thank you for this.
Thank you.
So my question sounds kind of provocative. That is not the intention, okay? The intention is to generate a dialogue. And I would like to ask you, because as I said, it's become so popular to hear about the importance of your role on set. However, how would you react and how would you respond to those who oppose to the need and necessity of an intimacy coordinator on set, and especially those who go to the next level, you know, calling you like the virtue police on set and that they don't need you? How would you respond to that?
Yeah, I think your question's great, and I don't think it's provocative at all. I think it's really important to address this, because I think a number of things. I think that people who feel that, it comes from a place of maybe a bad experience or maybe no experience. And I certainly know from speaking to very well-known actors who had never had to do a scene like this before, and all of a sudden in their 40s or 50s, they're doing a scene that requires this, and they've never met an intimacy coordinator before. They honestly believed that I was there to make sure that they weren't going to do anything wrong. to anybody else. So it comes from a place of inexperience, I think, or, and I think this is important, bad experience. And I think that what we need to be really careful of is that intimacy coordination now has exploded. And there are so many people training, wanting to do it and all of that. And then I think there's a quality control problem, you know, that can happen. And because the role is constantly growing and evolving, you know, intimacy coordinators is taking on maybe more than they need to. And I'm a little concerned about that, to tell you the truth. I think this job takes a great deal of sensitivity and emotional sensitivity and knowledge of the industry and how it works. So, for instance, bad comments that I've had from people who are not sure about intimacy coordinators, they'll say something like, oh my God, we were working with this person and we're just about to shoot, and he or she would run in and say, stop everything, stop. You know, actually, I don't think that the actor's very comfortable here, you know, and the actor was fine, you know.
Right.
Or they'll say, stop, I just need to check in with the actor. And the actor says, I don't need to check in again, you know. So it's and that's not helpful on any level. And it's not helpful when I go in to do a job and the actor has had an annoying or bad experience, you know, much as they can have with a bad director or you know, a not very good producer or something. So I think that's one thing. A lot of the time, people who say this feel that it ruins the spontaneity of the scene. And I've thought about this. I've thought about it a lot because I'm a teacher as well. And I think, well, surely, acting is all about making the moment seem spontaneous, right? We have to create spontaneity. What is spontaneous is how we might surprisingly react to a situation or our acting partner in the moment, in the scene, but we know where the scene's going to go. We know where the scene's going to go. If I'm playing, you know, a murderer in a scene, and I know that I've got to attack my victim, I don't want that moment of spontaneity to turn into something where I'm actually really going to hurt that person. You know, I know the boundaries. The boundaries are, I pick up the pretend knife, I stab them. You know, I don't start, I don't know, throwing the knife around and it might hit them in the eye. I want a spontaneous moment. So I feel that that's a really strange, very strange argument for me as an actor and as an acting coach. You have to rehearse, and you rehearse it, and then you can create that moment of believability. So I think these are the things that are difficult, and people think the spontaneity will go, but I don't think so.
Not in the least. And also, as you said, because it's part of the job to make the scenes again and again, so many takes. So the spontaneity, even though it's the thing that everybody's asking for, you know, they all make compromises in the ways of achieving it. So
I mean, the job of the actor is to make it seem like you have never spoken those words before, and you have this is the first time you're doing this. You know, that's what's required. So I find that a very strange criticism of it. But I do understand people feeling that it somehow interferes, they don't need it. And I think that's a choice. You know, Emma Thompson is a great advocate for the work, but she doesn't use one. She doesn't feel she needs and I think that's to be respected. I do. I don't think you need to force it on anyone, provided that her acting partner feels the same. And that's the other thing, you know, it's fine for you to say, I'm fine, absolutely fine walking around naked and simulating sex, but that may not be fine for the person that you're in the scene with. So
right.
I hope that helps.
Totally. Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure. Thank you for your question. Thank you.
All right, great. So the next question is coming from my lovely colleague Olivia Rogala. She's coming from Spain, and she represents Crew United Spain, and she's also an actress.
Ah, lovely.
Hello, lovely to meet you. Thank you, Irena. And thank you, Miriam, also for the insightful experience that you shared with us.
Thank you, Olivia. Lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you. And I was wondering, you have experience working with co-productions and people from different countries, right? Like in the set of White Lotus. And I was wondering if everybody on set was familiar with the role of an intimacy coordinator, and how the communication was different depending on the cultural background of each person, and how was it challenging, and how did you navigate that challenge? It's 4 questions, not 1. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I like that. So okay, let me address the first one. There were quite a few people who had never worked with an intimacy coordinator before on White Lotus 2, namely the Italian actors had not, because in Italy it's starting to happen. In fact, I'm working in Italy next week on an Italian production where they're definitely aware of the need for an intimacy coordinator and welcome it. So Simona Tabasco and Beatrice Grano had never worked with an intimacy coordinator before. I don't think that Sabrina Impacciatore had either, and a lot of the others. So that was really interesting. And they were so brilliant. They were so positive and welcoming of it, actually, and respectful of it. So that was great. So it was basically explaining to them a little more what it is, and then of course there were actors. There were a couple of British actors who'd not worked with intimacy coordinator before, and I mentioned Tom Hollander, and so it was again about kind of just explaining what it is that I do and why, and so it wasn't. I don't think it was challenging. It was kind of a really positive experience, because you then realize that when you have a group of people like that, international group of people, that it just kind of filters through, and then they will go and talk to people, and they will go and talk to people, and the knowledge spreads. So it was, in fact, Beatrice has been in touch about a friend of hers who wants to become an intimacy coordinator, so it's that sort of positivity. And so I wouldn't say it was challenging. I would say that it was delightful, actually, because certainly also White Lotus 2, when I spoke to Mike White, when he phoned me and asked me if I would do the job, he basically said, just so you know, season 2 is sex.
It is, yeah.
So there'll be a lot of scenes, and there's a lot of negotiating, and the thing is, he's the creator, he's the director, he's an executive producer, he's the key, and when you have a great, amazing person like that, it filters through. He was very mindful to listen to any worries that the actors had, and that's helpful too, and everything that needed to be in place was in place. And if an actor didn't want to do something, they didn't have to. So I can honestly say that all of those scenes were totally consensual, and every actor was happy to do it because of the communication. So yeah, that's
lovely.
Was great. It was a great experience. It was wonderful, working with such good people.
Yeah, and great to hear that it's pushing for it to be implemented in other countries and European countries as well.
Definitely.
So a win-win.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the best part of it, that it becomes a normal role, that you're just somebody who is meant to be there. It's part of the whole, production.
Amazing. Nice to hear you had such a great experience.
It was great.
Thank you.
It was great. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we are back to Athens, Venya.
Oh, right. Okay, it's me again. Okay, so Miriam, following to the last comments by Olivia, mentioning, how this becomes widespread in new countries, and me coming from Greece, which is a beautiful, amazing country with great talent, which is in the spotlight of international attention over the last few years, and big productions are shooting here. However, our industry is smaller compared to other European countries, right? So it's a complete luxury to even imagine having an intimacy coordinator in production shooting in Greece for the domestic standards. How would you, try to convince producers who are reluctant, using arguments about low budget or whatever, thinking that you're not necessary? How would you talk to them to make it a game changer, to change their mindset?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is that one way, and I don't mean this in a sort of negative, threatening way, is that it's about safety for them as well, that they are protected as well, because
producers,
that the producers and the production is protected, not just the actors, but the fact is that producers. Certainly in the productions I'm working on, want you there, because as soon as there's an issue, that there's an intimacy coordinator who can kind of talk to that actor, rather than that actor saying, I'm going to go to the press, or I'm going to go and complain to my agent about this, and then the agent might go to the press. So there is that side of it, which I think is really important, because since the Me Too factor, actors are very vocal now, quite rightly, and are empowered to go out and talk about things that happen that should never have happened. So it's like we're putting in a secure safety. Safety on set is not just about the actors; it's about the entire production. It also, it's great for the crew to know that there's somebody there, not keeping an eye and watching them, but it's about it's just a safer environment for everyone. So I think safety is number one word here to be used. And also I know that if it's a low budget, that is tricky. But honestly, what you can do then, which I have done as sort of as a favor for some low end productions, is that I've come in to have a meeting, to explain things, and just sort of say, this is what I would recommend. And perhaps they can't afford to have an intimacy coordinator on set, but this is what. So there's like a consultation.
And consultation, exactly.
At least start with a consultation, and then really, honestly, you could just have, certainly on low budget things, they're not going to have a big rehearsal period. It's going to be on set that day. So the intimacy coordinator could be just on set specifically, for that one day. If they try and shoot whatever they need to shoot in 1 or 2 days, rather than having to have an intimacy coordinator several times, you could have them come in once and shoot things. So there's that. But I think it's really about safety and coming in line with what's happening internationally. It's becoming the norm, and I think it's about getting that conversation going.
Sure.
But the safety thing I think is really important. That it's safer for everyone.
Absolutely, and it's also a matter of it only takes one production to start implementing it, and then the others step in and follow the practice.
Yeah, that's it. And it can be done on less of a scale financially. It doesn't have to be done like HBO do it, or like Netflix do it, or like a feature film will do it. Just minimal, but you have a person,
right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Miriam.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Lovely meeting you. Thank you.
Lovely to meet you.
And now we are connecting with Sonia Ossegui. She's a French and German actress and also a Crew United team member, right?
Hi, Miriam.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Bonsoir. Guten Abend. I was wondering, yes, I mean, you already said a lot, so thanks a lot for that. And but on the artistic point of view, do you often encounter problems, conflicts on set, and if you do, how do you deal with them? Because I got it that everything is very, very clear and structured, how you work, in a lot of preparation, but when it really comes to the moment, how do you deal when there are conflicts?
So the conflicts that you're talking about, do you mean, for instance, if a director has a particular vision and you're just not giving him or her what they want? Is that sort of thing?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's very, very seldom that would happen, because hopefully those issues have been ironed out before. What helps in those situations is a waiver, a rider. So if there's a legal piece of paper that is in my hand or in the producer's hand, and if the director says, I want, it comes, actually it will happen, for instance, if the script supervisor says to me, we actually see more than we're supposed to see in this moment, I don't think we can use this. So I then would have to have that conversation with the director and say, I'm afraid, I know you love that take, we can't use it. But that was the best take. And I'll say, we can't use it. And I'll say, but why can't I use it? And you say, because of this.
Yeah.
You know, because the actress has not consented to showing her rear naked. And in that particular shot, we did see it, you know? So, and it's not really conflict. It is a little bit of conflict, because of course the director goes, well, you know, damn, the acting was the best or whatever. But it's just very clear. So in terms of other conflicts, I like to think that is very, very, very rare, because I do listen to what the director wants. I do try to enable that to happen. And usually that's been ironed out before. So it's just on those occasions, those few occasions where they want to use a take and they can't use it.
All right.
Or, you know, or the director, did happen a little bit on a big show where the director was saying, damn it, but, you know, can't we just show a bit more of this? And you can actually then speak to the actor on set, and the waiver can, in some very rare circumstances, be changed then and there. But it's rare, because there's all sorts of things, like you have to have the waiver 48 hours before the shoot, blah, 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 blah. So the one thing I would say is that things have become far more formalized, which for the creative process, I guess sometimes it's frustrating. I understand that. But in terms of conflict, touch wood, very little.
Okay.
Yeah.
And whenever there is this situation, is there a need also for the director or for you to exchange afterwards if you have this feeling, like, you know?
To discuss it if there's I mean, there'll be you know, there's sometimes a situation where an actor, say a well-known actor, decides to just be slightly difficult, and maybe, you know, comes on set and says, actually, I'm not going to do that now. And the director has said, well, you were going to do that now. And the actor said, well, I'm not, you know, and it can become a little bit, and so I might have to sort of jump in and talk to the actor and eventually it's ironed out, you know, and the director then is frustrated because, of course, something's been agreed and it's at the last minute, you know. So things work both ways. So it's constant checking in and communicating. You know, but most of the time, directors now are getting so used to how this process works that they don't
question it.
They don't bend the rules. They don't bend the rules. They get it. They know this is what we've decided. This is where it's at. And again, it's about protecting themselves. You know, nobody wants an actor or an actress to go off and say that director made me or manipulated me or forced me. They don't want that. You know.
I see.
Yeah, there is that. I hope
Thanks
that's
for that.
the question.
Absolutely.
Oh, great.
I'm relieved that you don't encounter that much conflict.
Yeah, no, it's actually it's seldom. Yeah. Yeah. That's good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam.
Thank you.
Hey, great stuff. Hello again. Now we will be Kasia Kołodziejczak from Laboratorium Meissnera. She also has a question from our community. Kasia is, as I mentioned, our teacher at Laboratorium Meissnera, who teaches, she teaches Meissner technique, but she's also an actress and a light designer in a theater.
Wonderful. Gosh. Accolades. That's very impressive.
Thank you so very much, Miriam, for being with us and sharing. And actually, I would like to hop on Sonia's question about conflict, because you mentioned safe words. You mentioned the big shift in mentality in the industry, like things are changing for the better. But have you ever encountered a situation that you had to react on set and, for example, stop the scene because the boundaries that were agreed on, they were crossed, and what about your power when the shooting is being done, and how far can you go while communicating with the director and producers while things are being while things are happening actually?
Yeah, so that's a very good question, and I would say that in the last couple of years that has happened less and less. When this role first started, it was all about working out how to deal with moments like that. I can give an example of an actress. It was quite an intimate scene, and young actress, but in a big show, and she's the lead. And she was becoming more and more uncomfortable with the scene and asked to speak to me. And the problem was that she didn't want the director in the room.
Okay.
Which is tricky. Now, the reason she didn't, and I absolutely get it, it was a very, very, very small set, very small room. It was supposed to be something like, her student room. And the director, who's also a female, was in there with obviously the camera operator and sound. And she asked me to ask her to leave, which is tricky, very. So I negotiated that by saying, oh, and she asked me to stay. So that's why it was really actually quite tricky. But, I did it. And I just said that the actress was feeling uncomfortable and that she just felt that it was taking her longer to get the scene. There are too many people around her. Could I just be in the room with her? And that was negotiated and it was okay. There was another time where an actress, again, it was for quite an intimate scene on her own, and she asked me if she could have 5 minutes with no one, and she could just prep herself. And so I was able to go to the director and to the first AD and say that I know there's time pressure, there's always time pressure, but if you want to get this quickly, she needs 5 minutes to get in the zone and then we can go in and shoot it. So there are moments like that where there could potentially be conflict because you've got producers breathing down your neck saying, well, we haven't got 5 minutes. We always have 5 minutes. So, but, or a director saying, I need to be in the room because I'm giving, it's closed set and I want to sort of be giving direction. But if ideally they will listen because they need the shot, they need the scene. And if the actor is saying, I can't do this unless this, then I have to be able to negotiate. Now, I've got to say that happens less and less and less now. It used to happen at the beginning where a director didn't really know what the boundaries were. And, they would maybe be a little inappropriate, and indiscreet. And that happens less and less and less now. Or sometimes I don't understand why the first AD has to be in the room, and you sort of say, actually, we don't, could we just, so I wouldn't call them conflicts. I would say that they're like ironing out little sort of situations.
Like diplomacy, right?
Yes, and that's a really great word, Kasia. I think this role, you have to be a people person, and you have to be very diplomatic, and you have to be very aware of the fact that you're working in a high pressure situation, where everybody has got their job to do, and you shouldn't interfere with other people's jobs. And I think sometimes intimacy coordinators do, and they get too involved in what is the costume department or the makeup department or the script supervisor's job or the first AD's job. Everybody has a specific job, and our job is to navigate and create a situation, an atmosphere where the actors can work, can do the same. So I would say that conflict is less and less now. She says.
Brilliant. All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Olivia Rogala from Spain is back with us with another question concerning communication.
Hello again. Yeah, exactly. My question. You can't hear me properly.
Yeah.
That's odd.
Let's see. Okay.
Is it any better?
Yeah, I can hear you. I was just worried that you can't hear me. But
I can hear you perfectly.
Good. Okay.
Okay, so intimacy coordinators are famously known for their approach towards actors and directors, and we learned today with first ADs as well. But I was wondering, how does the communication take place with the rest of the crew? Which extent do you work with them? Do they need coordinating too? And do they need your assistance as well as a coordinator?
Yeah, so that's a really good point. I mean, obviously, I speak to costume, to makeup, to first AD, DOP, the key people that I will be involved with. But my go-to person always is the first AD, and establishing a really good rapport and communication with the first AD, because the first AD will relay to the crew what is needed. So, and obviously when I'm on set, because I'm literally on set and present, I do introduce myself to as many people as possible, so that they know why I'm there, who I am. But it always comes down to the first AD actually being on my side and making sure that the crew know what's going on. But I think it's really important that you do introduce yourself to as many people as possible, and they do understand what it is that you do. Because by the time I get to set, I'm literally on set. I'm not choreographing the scene particularly. I'm not, because the work's being done. And I think that that's what they don't get sometimes, that the work's actually being done. I'm there, I'm present for the actor. but all the negotiating has happened. And but yes, I mean, it's also important to know that to understand that the crew can sometimes feel nervous about a scene, you know, and that they know how to not be in the way, or how to be very minimal with what they need to do, you know. Sensitivity and respect and trust, I think, is important.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, wow, I got lost. Oh yes, I know. I'm so sorry. We're gonna. I just yes, we're going to have a question from Ula Zawadzka again. So I would like to invite Ula.
Yep,
I'm back.
Hello, Ula. Yes.
Hi. So I hope you could help us actors about this. So sometimes by doing the physical act of a love scene on the film set, due to adrenaline, etc., the emotions of the characters transfer to the real life of the actors. You probably have heard about it, that it sometimes happens. And I wanted to ask you for an advice how to stay unattached and fully professional, especially in these intimate scenes and even afterwards on set.
Yeah, so that really comes from the rehearsal process. So the rehearsal process helps the actor become not detached, but it becomes like a dance. You should think about it as a choreography. So the physical, I mean, obviously you are really touching that person, you are really kissing that person, you are embracing and all of that, but it's a learnt dance sequence, if you like, and that helps enormously. Because what we don't want an actor to ever do, or what I don't want them to do, is to use your own personal intimate life. That is what this work is about. The intimate scene should be character driven, story driven. Why does she do this like this? It's because, you know, that's who she is as the character. So I think what used to happen a lot in the past is that, you know, a director would say, oh, and now here's the sex scene. So I'll just leave you guys up, you know, you just get on with it and do something. And of course, what do people do? They use their own emotional, physical life, because that's what you have, right? So I think if that helps, if that goes any way to answering your question, I think it's the rehearsal, it's working out the choreography quite clearly, then making it seem organic and making it seem seamless. You know, you go from step 1 to 2, 3, 4, 5, and it's like the journey of the piece, but it's not you engaging your private, internal, intimate life, because that isn't what it should be. And I think the less you do that, the less the emotional. Your question about, you know, how do you stop yourself from becoming? How did you phrase it?
That the emotions of the characters transfer to the real life of the actors, because like we're working on human body, right? So even with the touching or hugging, there are some hormones that are like,
of course,
leveled up during the scene. So sometimes it can mix up afterwards, right?
Yeah, and I think that's where you have to work out what your boundaries are in the rehearsal as well, which is what we talked about, your physical and your emotional boundaries. If something triggers something in you, then you need to speak up and say, I need to find another way, because this is, you know, this is making me go in a direction I don't want to go to, or it's bringing up things I don't want to bring into the scene. And it's about protecting yourself, really protecting yourself. You know, what feels okay, what doesn't feel okay, you know? And the more you do that, I think the less this will happen, where, you know, your own emotional state comes into play. Because as with everything in acting, you have to obviously be brave and bold, but you have to also know where your limits are. Not your limits in terms of your talent, in terms of your boundaries.
But is there like this basic rule, because sometimes they teach us this at acting schools, that you're not supposed to kiss someone with a tongue? So
that's not a rule. That's a conversation. That is a conversation. So it's a conversation that I would have. For instance, the thing with the kissing, that's a really good point that you brought that up. Kissing is real. It really happens. Simulated sexual intercourse doesn't really happen. You know, so when actors are required to kiss, they have to kiss. There's no way out of it, right? So that sometimes is even harder for an actor to do than other things. So we have a discussion. I have a discussion with the director, and I'll say, what kind of kissing is this? Is this passionate? You know, is it lustful, or is it, you know, supremely romantic, or is it just endearing? We talk about the quality of the kiss and what's required. And I will often ask, so are tongues something that is required in this scene? And the director might say, well, that would be nice, but if they don't want to do it, that's fine. Or no, I don't want that. So then it's a conversation with the actors. If the actors are comfortable, both of them, doing that, then there is no rule about it not being okay. It's okay. But you have to ask permission. You can't just, because a lot of times actors have said to me they've had a kissing scene and they've been completely freaked out because somebody's just, you know, coming with their tongue. And you think, oh, I wasn't expecting that. So you have, again, it's communication.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you, Miriam. And we have another person, Alicia Kobov. She is from Anywhere PL, a media platform. So welcome, Alicia. And here's your time with Miriam.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi. Thank you. It's very good to see you and to hear you. And you are talking about very interesting things for me.
Thank you.
My question is related to the differences between men and women during the intimate scenes. And is it possible to say that there are these differences? And by your experience, can you tell us that who is more uncomfortable with this kind of scenes, men or women? And do you see this relations?
Well, I can say that I have come across situations where the men are just as uncomfortable as the women. Both are uncomfortable. And sometimes I would say that young men or older men are more uncomfortable than everyone, because they are so aware of the sort of the Me Too stuff and the conversations around men always being, you know, the ones to kind of be the aggressors, that comes into it. But more often than not, I would say it is equally awkward and embarrassing for men and women. The same. It's the same. And in fact, one comment that I had just the other day from a young, very experienced actor now, and he's done a lot of these scenes, is he said that when he did season 1 of a particular show, he noticed that the intimacy coordinator was always concentrating on the woman in the scene. And he was just kind of ignored, like he was fine. And it was all about looking after the female in the scene. And I would say that it's looking after both. Really, it is. And both, all genders feel nervous. And it's an individual thing. So, you know, some women are really, really fine with it, really relaxed, really okay. And same with some men. But what it is now is they're just very aware of their partner. And, you know, it's working together. But there isn't, I would say it's equal in my experience. And sometimes we tend to ignore the men. And we think they're fine, but they're just as nervous.
Yeah, I understand.
They're just as vulnerable.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Right. The next question is coming from me.
Yeah.
So, intimacy coordination is a relatively new topic, a new profession as well, and people doing it mostly come from other areas. You yourself, you are an actress, a coach, a trainer, a teacher. And what kind of experience is most useful? I mean, from which other professions do the people come? And
yeah. So I would say that, so there's a couple of, a lot of people who get into this are movement directors. So they're movement directors, they understand choreography. And so quite a few people I know do both. They're movement directors and they became intimacy coordinators. The other people that have become intimacy coordinators are stunt coordinators, because they also understand the body and how that works. And then, of course, there are actors, So it's interesting, actually. But they're the kind of areas: movement directors and stunt people tend to be the ones that will move into it. Or people like me. I'm not a movement director and I'm not a stunt coordinator. I've obviously done a lot of movement stuff in my teaching and completely have huge respect for it. And sometimes in my work, I will work with the movement director on the film. If there's a specific requirement, we'll work together. But I stray. I'm going off in a different direction. But they're the areas that people kind of come in on, generally speaking.
Sonia, I know that you would like to ask about the process on how to become an intimacy coordinator, right?
Exactly.
Sorry,
right.
say that
So
again.
there are...
What was that, Irena? The process, did you say?
Yeah. Sonia?
What course, actually very concretely, what courses? I mean, there are quite a few already courses and certifications on the market. So how, let's say I want to become an intimacy coordinator, how to recognize which course makes sense and it gives you the right tools and which certificate is really respected by the production companies.
Yeah, so there's not very many, actually. There's not very many. I think there are lots of people doing short courses and introductions too, and workshops and things like that. That's all really helpful to do, I think, especially if you want to have a sense of what the job is and see if you want to take it further. But there's IDC, which is great, except the only problem with IDC is that some of the training's in the UK and then some of it's in New York. So I think that can be quite costly. Intimacy on set, I believe, are still training. And there is an MA that they're talking about starting in the UK. So there, with training, it is quite difficult. I don't think there's a great deal. I'm sorry, my phone is ringing, and I'm just going to turn it off. It's making sure that the people who are running courses are accredited, and and that whatever you're paying for is accredited and correct, and will be recognized in the industry. And at the moment, that there's only really a couple of in the UK, a couple of courses. But I think that will also grow and expand. And but I would certainly say that some of the short courses are great, introduction courses, and there are certain individuals that do those, and they're great.
Okay, good. Sure. Thanks for that.
Pleasure.
So now it's me, Miriam.
Oh, hey, hello.
And I have a very interesting question, which we have got from a form, because people could have sent us questions from Julia from Germany. And to be honest, I would never think about such a question. She's asking, how does it look like when there are teenage actors or even child actors required to have like scenes which include nudity or even intimate scenes, is there any other professionalist on the film set, like I don't know, psychologist or how parents?
Well,
How
to tell you the truth, there are all sorts of laws and regulations when somebody is under 18. They're very protected in the UK, and in fact, on House of the Dragon, I believe that Emily Carey was only just not quite 18, I think. And in fact, she did have a sex scene when she was 18, which is fine. But there are all sorts of rules and regulations, and it's not my specialty. And often what you do get is shows that depict teenagers, they're actually over 18. So shows like Sex Education, Heartbreaker, they are above 18. But I know that there's a whole world out there of rules about that, and that you can access through BECTU, which is the union that I'm part of. And there are rules and regulations about that, because that does come up from time to time. I've not worked with people that young, so it's not something that I've had to look into, but there's certainly support and guidance for it, because that's a whole other experience, you know, that is a minefield.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Miriam.
No worries. Absolutely.
And the next will be Alicia from Anywhere.pl.
Hi again.
Hello.
And my second question is a little bit tricky, because it's related to the scenes, to the nude scenes that they are actually not put in the movie by the end of the day. So how do you work when actually there's no nude scene, but the audience has this feeling that maybe something happened? And my question is kind of related to the White Lotus, the second season, because there's this kind of scene that we can think that something happened, but we are not really sure that happens. And is it necessary to work with actors, and what do you need to tell them to work well in this kind of scene, and how does it work? Because it's kind
so is there a specific scene that you're thinking of in White Lotus?
For example, the scene on the island, where when they are going there to the island, and we think that they are going to have sex, but we don't actually know. Or maybe the scenes in the hotel as well. We can also talk about them, because they are kind of tricky, because they need to pretend that they did something, but we don't know if they did, and we need to think.
Well, I guess the simple answer there is, if you don't see it on screen, if the scene is not there on screen, then I'm not required, you know, to do anything about that. It might be a discussion in terms of how that might lead to an intimate moment with her husband later or something like that. But the scenes that are not scripted and not shot, it's just a discussion. It's and it's more of a discussion with the director as to did they or didn't they. But we will never know. It's really about that's part of the story and part of the plot and part of the character development, and certainly with Mike White's work, there's a level of ambiguity to certain things, but I would not be required to prep the actors for something that we don't know about or see, unless it impacted an intimate scene after that or something, and then it would be a part of a discussion. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense. And I also thought about these scenes with the girls, with the prostitutes, for example. And is there any? I'm sorry, but can I ask another question?
Yeah.
Maybe is there any difference between the regular sex, erotic sex, and between this kind of sex with people who actually are sex workers? Is there any differences with working with this kind of characters?
You mean, do they have to do any extra work to be believable in the part?
Yes, for example, yes.
Well, that really comes from the actor, I think. It comes from the actor and what research, and preparation they need to do. There are certain times, this is a bit different, but there are certain times when I've had to work on scenes where we have professional sort of people come in who do simulate sex scenes. They're sort of essays really, rather than actors. But I think that's a different question to what you're asking, which is really, I think, the prep work they would need to do. They would need to speak to their director, and if he says you are a prostitute and this is the kind of prostitute you are, and the sort of sex that you sell, then that's a kind of conversation around character, I would say, because again, they're not required to do anything physical connected to that. I mean, it's we did see them having sex, obviously, but it was character driven, plot driven, and it was whatever they felt was right for their parts.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Great. Pleasure. Hello.
Hi, it's me again. I would like to go a step back to the process of becoming, to the education, the training. How about film schools, acting schools? Does it have to be included into the process of education, and do the teachers need to be briefed on how to work with intimacy scenes? Do you do it already? What is happening in this area?
We do it already. So I would say yes to all of those questions. In fact, I was asked today if I would go and run a workshop at Central School of Speech and Drama in a couple of weeks' time. What's happening is it's not a crucial part of the curriculum, but what is happening is that ICs are going in and running workshops for the students so that they know what it is. For instance, the last 2 years I've worked at RADA with the final year students on their films. And they have scenes of an intimate nature in there. Then I work as though I would in a professional setting so that they understand what it is. But also, most of the schools now, film schools, are getting people in to run workshops and for it to become part of the curriculum. Absolutely. And that's been happening for a while. In fact, that sort of started happening at the same time that the intimacy coordination work really began here. It almost started in that setting, actually, because there was a woman called Vanessa Ewan, and she wrote a book. She is a movement director at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. And based on her book of how to approach intimate scenes, this whole kind of world happened, actually. So it started as an academic, on an academic level, actually. So I think the more that is entrenched, the more that happens early, the better, because then actors come out and they know what it is. They also know how to work with their fellow actors, and it takes the fear away, because there is a process. There is an actual process in the choreography, pre-choreography, of how to get comfortable with somebody in that space, which you don't have time to do on set or on a production very often. So it's wonderful if actors know that, and then they know the language and they know how to approach a scene with their scene partner.
Amazing.
In a professional setting, yeah.
We have many questions which have been asked in our chat. So, and still 10 minutes to go. So I think it's a good moment to take a look at the most interesting ones.
Okay, lovely.
There was a question about from Karina Badura, who is asking. Let me just highlight this question. Yes, she is asking if these rules could be implemented in theaters.
They are. They already are. More and more and more now, an intimacy coordinator will be attached to a theatre production. So, for instance, The Crucible is coming up in London. There's an intimacy coordinator. Even in opera, there's now intimacy coordinator, depending on, obviously what the play is. Certainly, I love theatre, and I've been, going as much as I can now post-COVID. And I noticed that most productions now have an intimacy coordinator on board. So, and in a way, it makes complete and utter sense. Complete sense. So yes, that I'm happy to say that is just as normal now.
That is very good to hear, and I thought so, because why wouldn't be otherwise? But I'm so glad that someone asked this question, so we can, because we're focusing more on films, because
always,
that's where you are working more. But yes, in theater, absolutely, there is so much close contacts, and
absolutely,
needed.
For sure. So I'm happy that's happening too. It's great.
Thank you, Miriam. There was another question which is interesting. I'm just gonna show it here from Lucy. Can an intimacy coordinator help to work out non-physical intimacy?
Yeah. So that would be like establishing a moment between the actors where they're perhaps not necessarily touching or in any kind of physical interaction. But yes, definitely. There's or a moment when there's sort of something going on, but creating that that feeling and that tone is certainly something that is part of our work, because of course it's the emotional side of it, and that's what we're doing when we break a scene down. We find the physical, and then we marry it with the emotional part of the scene. So, he looks at her, she takes a step forward, she holds his hand, and then you weave in the script. So it's very much so working up. It's marrying the two. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much. There is another question, Miriam, but I think it was actually answered, but I'm still gonna show it here.
If I had said yes to something before, then I feel bad about it because comfort zone can change. How do I go? Yeah, we've sort of answered that. That it's really about please speak up. If you say yes, I'm actually fine with that. And then you think about it. You go away and you think about it. And you think, actually, I'm not. And it's deciding to speak up and to. If you have an intimacy coordinator on board, fantastic. Then you can speak to the intimacy coordinator and they will do the talking for you. But otherwise, it's speak to your director, speak to your producer, or speak to your agent, and really, be true to yourself. And what you want to do is normalize this as much as possible. And just. It's a conversation about anything else, not to feel the pressure.
Right. Yes.
That you have to do something that maybe you feel very uncomfortable about.
Yeah. And I think also, like, when we have this feeling that we actually can say no, it puts us immediately in this like more comfortable place within uncomfortable situations. So it is such a good place to be in, that maybe we will feel comfortable to do what we have agreed and discussed to do, because we're not talking about
and always go back to the story, always go back to the story, always go back to the character, always, because that's your anchor. Does it make sense? Does it make sense for this point? I don't know how it makes sense. I need to just have some clarification. you know. So that's the way to think about it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Miriam. Thank you. And I would like to invite all our guests who asked you a question, and because I'm sure we will all want to say one big thank you to you, Miriam.
Thank you.
It's yes, I just feel so honored that you were here, and I'm so happy, and thank you so much for being so giving us so much of your knowledge. And you've been talking for like 2 hours straight, and you just seem as fresh and as full of energy as in the beginning. And I don't know how you do it.
I just want to say thank you as well. Thank you very much, Sylvia, for making it happen. You know, and I'm so pleased that our paths have crossed again, and that you're doing such amazing work with such incredible people. And I'm so honored to meet such an international group. And I wish I could come and see all your work and all your institutions, and because that is just my passion. And you know that actors just have the best at their disposal, you know, people that really care and that love the work. So thank you very, very much. It's been a huge pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All the very best. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Wow. And thank you everybody for staying